Imagine this, a black Marine, proud and decorated, sitting at his son's graduation, expecting a peaceful day of celebration. But then, two guards approach, demanding he leave. What could possibly be so urgent? As the tension rises, 6 SEALs walk into the room, their silence echoing louder than words. In a heartbeat, everything changes. What is their mission? Who are they really working for? And what is the dark secret that ties this Marine to their dangerous operation? This is no ordinary day. This is a fight for survival, one that could destroy everything he's fought for. Stick with us to uncover the shocking truth. And don't forget, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the jaw-dropping twists ahead. Trust me, you'll want to know what happens next. The day was bright, the air warm with the hum of excitement. The graduation ceremony was in full swing, and the crowd buzzed with pride. Families sat in neatly arranged rows, their eyes glued to the stage. Among them sat Sergeant Marcus Hale, a decorated Marine, now retired. He had a quiet strength about him. His dark eyes scanned the crowd, watching the young faces filled with anticipation. He had done his time, served his country, and now, it was his son's turn. His son, Elijah, was graduating today. The pride Marcus felt swelled in his chest. Elijah had worked hard, earned his place in the world. A future ahead of him, full of promise. But then, a shadow fell over the moment. 2 security guards approached Marcus. Their uniforms were crisp, their faces unreadable. They stopped in front of him, their presence demanding attention. "Sir," one said, his tone flat. "We need you to leave the premises." Marcus blinked, confusion creeping into his mind. "Excuse me?" he asked, his voice a low rumble. "This is my son's graduation," he added, his grip tightening on his seat. The guards exchanged a brief glance, their eyes hard. "We've been instructed," the other guard said, his voice almost dismissive. "Please, leave the premises now." Marcus stood, his heart thundering in his chest. What was happening? Why was he being asked to leave? This was supposed to be a moment of celebration, not a confrontation. As he took a step forward, his son Elijah stood at the front of the stage. He saw his father, eyes wide in confusion, and then his face changed. A flicker of concern. But before Marcus could react, something else caught his attention. A group of 6 men, dressed in military garb, entered the room. They moved with precision, their eyes scanning the room like hunters. Marcus recognized them instantly. They were Navy SEALs. The air in the room seemed to still. The buzz of conversation faded as the SEALs approached the security guards. Without a word, they surrounded the guards, their presence overwhelming. The guards tensed, clearly unsure of how to react. Marcus stood frozen, the weight of the situation slowly sinking in. Elijah's graduation had become a spectacle. The SEALs didn't look at Marcus. They didn't need to. They were here for one reason, and one reason only. The tension in the room was palpable. Every eye was on them now. What was going on? Why were these men here? One of the SEALs stepped forward, his voice calm, but firm. "This man stays." The guards glanced at each other, their eyes filled with uncertainty. They didn't move, but they didn't challenge the SEALs either. Marcus, still standing, took a step back, his confusion mounting. What was happening? Why was the presence of these men so powerful? Elijah's eyes shifted back and forth between his father and the scene unfolding. He was no longer just a graduate. He was now part of something much bigger. The SEALs didn't speak again. They simply stood, their presence heavy in the room. The graduation ceremony continued, but the air was thick with tension. Marcus could feel the heat of the stares from the crowd, their silent questions hanging in the air. No one spoke. No one moved. And for the first time that day, the ceremony felt like it had stopped. But the question lingered in the back of Marcus's mind. Who had sent the guards? And why did the SEALs stand by his side? Then the first SEAL turned to Marcus. "Stay calm, Sergeant. We've got this covered." And just like that, the room exhaled. The tension didn't lift, but the energy shifted. The guards, defeated without a word, stepped back. The SEALs didn't stay long, but their presence had changed everything. Marcus didn't know what had just happened, but he knew this day would never be forgotten. The ceremony resumed, but the room was no longer the same. The question remained. Why had those guards been sent after him? And more importantly, what had the SEALs meant by their silent protection? Marcus' mind raced, but he didn't let it show. Not in front of Elijah. The pride in his son's eyes was enough to keep him grounded. But the silence that hung in the air. It was deafening. And that silence. It was only the beginning. As the ceremony went on, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. He watched Elijah walk across the stage, his face a mix of joy and nervousness. The applause roared, but Marcus' mind was elsewhere. His eyes kept darting back to the SEALs. They hadn't left the room. They stood in the back, silently watching everything, as if waiting for something to happen. Marcus' thoughts raced. Who had orchestrated this? Why was he singled out? A few minutes later, a tap on his shoulder pulled him from his thoughts. It was Elijah. He was standing beside him now, his graduation cap in hand. "Dad?" Elijah asked, his voice low. "What's going on? Why were those guys here?" Marcus took a deep breath, trying to steady his emotions. He wanted to tell his son everything, but the truth didn't feel right. "I don't know, son," Marcus replied. "But we'll figure it out. Just focus on today, okay? This is your moment." Elijah seemed to understand, but there was a hint of doubt in his eyes. He didn't question his father further. Instead, he smiled, and for a brief moment, the weight of the day lifted. But the questions kept gnawing at Marcus. Why had the guards been told to remove him? What did the SEALs know that he didn't? As the ceremony wound down, Marcus noticed the guards retreating to the back of the hall. They didn't look relieved. They looked worried. Something was wrong. Marcus' gut told him the trouble wasn't over. That uneasy feeling gnawed at him, sharper now than before. When the ceremony ended, and families started to exit, Marcus made a decision. "Let's go, son," he said, standing up and pulling Elijah by the arm. "We're leaving." Elijah glanced at his father, but said nothing. There was something in Marcus' eyes now that made his son understand. They walked out of the hall, past the SEALs, who made no attempt to stop them. It wasn't until they reached the parking lot that Marcus spoke again. "Get in the car, Elijah," he said, his voice low, tense. Elijah hesitated, sensing the shift in his father's demeanor. "Dad, what's going on? Who were those guys?" Marcus opened the car door, his eyes scanning the area. He couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. "We're being watched," Marcus muttered, more to himself than to Elijah. He slammed the door shut after Elijah climbed in, and for a moment, everything seemed still. But the quiet was short-lived. Just as Marcus was about to start the car, a figure emerged from the shadows at the far end of the parking lot. It was one of the security guards. He was walking toward Marcus' car, his posture stiff, like a man on a mission. Marcus' hand instinctively moved toward the glove compartment where his old service pistol was stashed. But before he could reach it, the guard raised his hand. He wasn't here to fight. At least, not in the way Marcus expected. "I need to speak with you," the guard said, his voice calm but urgent. Marcus didn't move, his eyes narrowing. "I don't have anything to say to you," he replied, his voice steady but filled with a warning. The guard ignored him, stepping closer to the car. We didn't know, he said, his voice lower now. We were just following orders. But it's bigger than you think. Marcus' heart skipped a beat. Bigger than him? What was this man talking about? Before he could ask, another figure appeared from the shadows behind the guard. It was one of the SEALs. The same man who had stepped forward earlier in the ceremony. Let him talk, Sergeant, the SEAL said, his voice soft but firm. The guard hesitated but nodded. I'm sorry for what happened, he said. You don't know who we're dealing with. They want you out of the picture. Marcus' breath caught. The room started to spin. Who was after him? The SEAL's gaze locked onto Marcus. There's more going on here than you realize. Marcus glanced back at Elijah, who was staring at him, confused and worried. He couldn't let this go any further. He had to protect his son. But as he started the car and began to pull away, the SEAL stepped forward. We'll be in touch, the SEAL said, his voice cold as ice. Marcus' pulse raced as he drove off. What had just happened? Who was after him? And why had the SEALs protected him? The questions swirled in his mind as he drove, but he didn't have answers. Not yet. But one thing was clear. This wasn't over. And it was only just beginning. The drive home was tense. Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they were being followed. The rearview mirror was a constant source of anxiety, his eyes flicking to it every few seconds. Elijah remained silent beside him, his face a mixture of confusion and concern. His father had always been a rock, steady and unshakable, but tonight, Marcus was different. Dad, Elijah finally spoke up, his voice trembling slightly. Who were those men? What did they want? Marcus exhaled sharply, trying to steady his nerves. I don't know, son. I don't know. He tried to make it sound convincing, but the doubt in his voice was clear. He wasn't sure of anything anymore. When they arrived home, Marcus didn't park in the driveway. He pulled the car into the garage and immediately locked the door. He glanced around the darkened street, his senses on high alert. We need to stay inside, he said, his voice low and firm. Elijah didn't argue. He could feel the tension radiating off his father. Without a word, he followed Marcus into the house. Once inside, Marcus double-checked the locks on all the doors and windows. The house, usually a sanctuary, now felt like a trap. His military instincts kicked in, and he moved through the rooms with swift precision, scanning for anything out of place. Dad, what's happening? Elijah asked again, his voice growing more desperate. Why did those guards come after you? And who are the SEALs? Marcus paused, looking at his son. He could see the fear in Elijah's eyes, and it broke his heart. But there was no time to comfort him. There was only time to protect him. I don't have the answers, son, Marcus said, his voice tight. But I'll find out. I promise you that. He grabbed his phone from the kitchen counter and dialed a number. The phone rang once, twice, and then someone picked up. Marcus, a familiar voice came through the receiver. It was his old commanding officer, Colonel Donovan. Colonel, we have a problem, Marcus said, his voice low. We need to talk. There was a long pause on the other end. Then Colonel Donovan spoke, his tone serious. Meet me at the old cabin outside of town. Midnight. It's important. Marcus' heart skipped. The cabin was secluded, off the grid. If Donovan was asking to meet there, it meant things had escalated. Understood, Marcus said, then hung up the phone. He turned to Elijah, who was watching him intently. Where are you going, Dad? Elijah asked. I'll be back soon, son, Marcus replied, his voice steady but full of warning. Stay inside. Lock the doors. And don't open them for anyone. Understand? Elijah nodded, though uncertainty still clouded his features. Marcus grabbed his jacket, his mind already racing. As he stepped out of the house and into the night, he felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. This was no longer just about him. It was about something bigger. He drove toward the cabin in silence, every muscle tense. The further he got from town, the more the world seemed to fall away. The road to the cabin was long, winding, and isolated. The darkness of the forest swallowed the headlights of his car, leaving him alone with his thoughts. The questions loomed over him. Who were the men who had tried to remove him from Elijah's graduation? And why had the SEALs intervened? As he neared the cabin, a thought struck him. What if it wasn't just about him? What if they were after Elijah too? His hands tightened around the steering wheel. He couldn't let that happen. Not now. Not ever. When he finally reached the cabin, Colonel Donovan was waiting outside, his silhouette barely visible against the backdrop of trees. Marcus stepped out of the car, his senses heightened. "You got here quick," Donovan said, his voice low but filled with an edge of urgency. "You said it was important," Marcus replied, his tone sharp. "Now, tell me what's going on." Donovan glanced around, making sure they were alone before speaking. "It's worse than we thought, Marcus. Those guards were just a distraction. They were meant to get you away from your son, but that's not the real issue." Marcus narrowed his eyes. "What do you mean?" "The SEALs," Donovan said, his voice thick with concern. "They weren't there to protect you. They were there to make sure you didn't interfere. This goes higher than anyone you know. It's not just about you being a Marine, Marcus. It's about something much bigger." Marcus' pulse quickened. "Who's behind this?" Donovan's eyes flicked to the dark trees around them. "I don't know yet, but we're about to find out. You and Elijah are in more danger than I ever thought." The words hit Marcus like a punch. His mind raced, trying to process the gravity of what Donovan was saying. "Is Elijah safe?" Marcus asked, his voice tight. Donovan didn't respond immediately. Instead, he handed Marcus a sealed envelope. "I can't explain much now. But this will get you answers. It's the first piece of the puzzle." Marcus took the envelope, his hand trembling slightly. As he tore it open, the light from the cabin revealed a single sheet of paper. It was a list of names and locations, names that meant nothing to him, but the locations. They were all close to him. Too close. The room fell silent. The weight of the moment settled between them. "Marcus," Donovan said, his voice low. "Whatever's happening, it's just getting started." Marcus' chest tightened. This wasn't over. And whatever came next would change everything. Marcus stared at the list of names and locations in his hands. His mind raced as he processed the gravity of what Donovan had just revealed. Each name was a person, each location a place Marcus had either been or been connected to in the past. But the proximity of these locations to his family. He had never felt more vulnerable. "Who are these people?" Marcus asked, his voice strained with urgency. His fingers tightened around the paper. Donovan hesitated before answering. "They're part of a network you've never been told about. A shadow operation, secretive, powerful, and dangerous. And it's been operating under the radar for years." Marcus' stomach churned. This was no longer just about his military past, his service, or his retirement. This was something bigger, darker, something that threatened everything he cared about. "Why wasn't I told?" Marcus demanded, his voice low but filled with a rising anger. "I've been trained for this my entire life, and you're telling me I've been in the dark." Donovan's face tightened. "Because you weren't supposed to be involved. You did your part, Marcus. You did your duty. But someone decided to pull you back in. And now they're going after your son, too." The words hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. Elijah. His son was in danger. Where is he? Marcus asked, panic creeping into his voice. Where is Elijah now? Donovan's eyes flicked to the trees surrounding them, then back to Marcus. He's safe, for now. But that won't last long. Marcus felt his heart skip. Donovan, I need you to tell me what the hell is going on. Donovan took a step closer, lowering his voice. They've been watching you both for months. You thought the graduation incident was just a misunderstanding. It wasn't. It was the beginning of something much larger. They're watching you, your son, and they won't stop until they get what they want. Marcus' mind was spinning, but his instincts kicked in. His son was still out there, vulnerable, and Marcus wasn't about to sit back and let anyone harm him. Donovan, we need to go back to the house, Marcus said, his voice firm. We need to make sure Elijah's safe. We can't wait for this to escalate any further. But Donovan didn't budge. We don't know if that's safe, he said, his voice laced with worry. They've already been there. The house is compromised. Marcus froze. Compromised? What did that mean? Then where is safe? Marcus asked, his frustration building. Donovan's eyes flicked down to the list of names in Marcus' hand. There's a place, an old safe house not far from here. It's off the grid, secure, and it's the only place I can guarantee safety right now. But you have to trust me, Marcus. We can't go back to your house. Marcus clenched his jaw. He didn't like it. But Donovan was right. Every second they wasted, Elijah was closer to becoming a target. We'll go there, Marcus said, his voice resolute. But we're not staying there long. Elijah needs to know what's going on. I won't hide this from him. Donovan nodded. Agreed. But right now, your priority is keeping him safe. They moved quickly, leaving the cabin behind, and Marcus felt the weight of the moment settle deep into his bones. Every step they took felt like they were walking deeper into something they couldn't yet understand. As they drove toward the safe house, Marcus' thoughts were a whirlwind. Who was behind this? Why Elijah? What had Donovan been keeping from him all these years? The drive felt endless, the darkness around them more suffocating than ever. Every passing car, every rustling tree made Marcus feel more exposed. Someone was watching. And they were closing in. When they finally arrived at the safe house, it was a secluded, run-down cabin, much like the one they just left. But this time, there was no choice. Marcus stepped out of the car, his hand instinctively going to his sidearm, his senses on high alert. He glanced over at Donovan, whose face had gone pale. It's here, Donovan said quietly. This is the safest place I know for now. Marcus didn't respond. His mind was still focused on one thing, getting to Elijah. They entered the cabin, which was cold and dark, but Marcus didn't care about comfort. He only cared about the safety of his son. Get inside, Marcus told Donovan. I'll go get Elijah. But Donovan caught his arm before he could leave. Marcus, there's something you need to know. Marcus looked at him, his brow furrowed in confusion. What? What now? Donovan hesitated, then said, You're not the only one they're after. Marcus' heart stopped. What do you mean? Donovan sighed, his face filled with regret. They've been tracking Elijah, too. And I'm afraid they're already too close. A chill ran down Marcus' spine as he raced for the door. No time to talk, he said, panic rising in his chest. I need to get to him. But before he could reach the door, the sound of a car pulling up outside froze him in place. The sound of footsteps followed. Heavy. Purposeful. And then, the voice he'd been dreading to hear echoed through the cabin. Marcus Hale, we've been waiting for you. Marcus froze. The voice cut through the cold air, chilling him to the bone. He didn't recognize it, but the tone, smooth and confident, sounded like someone who had been in control for a long time. Donovan's hand instinctively went to his sidearm, but Marcus stopped him with a look. "No," Marcus whispered, his voice sharp. "We need to know who they are. Stay quiet." The footsteps outside were closer now, deliberate. Marcus' heart thudded in his chest as he slowly backed away from the door, his eyes flicking to the windows, searching for movement. The voice came again, softer this time but still just as commanding. "We know you're in there, Marcus. There's no point hiding." A chill settled deep in Marcus' bones. How did they know his name? How did they know he was here? Then, the unmistakable sound of a door handle being turned. The cabin door creaked open. Marcus held his breath. Every muscle in his body tensed as the door opened fully, but no one stepped inside. It was a standoff. In that moment of silence, the only sound was the wind rustling through the trees. Suddenly, the voice from outside spoke again, but this time it was laced with something darker. "We'll be inside shortly, Marcus. And when we are, we're not leaving without you, or your son." The implication hung in the air like a heavy weight, pressing down on Marcus' chest. They weren't just here for him. They were after Elijah, too. "Donovan," Marcus whispered, his eyes locking onto the older man, "we don't have much time. We need to move. Now." Donovan nodded, his hand still gripping his weapon. "We need to make sure the boy is okay." Marcus didn't wait for another word. He dashed across the room and swung open the cabin's small back door. The darkness outside was thick and suffocating, but Marcus didn't hesitate. He had to get to Elijah before they did. As he sprinted across the uneven ground, his thoughts flashed back to the warning. "Stay quiet. Don't make a sound." He had no choice but to ignore them. Elijah was out there. The wind howled through the trees as he neared the edge of the woods. He couldn't see anything yet, but he knew the general direction where his son would be. He just hoped he wasn't too late. But the instant he crossed into the trees, the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoed behind him. Not the ones he was expecting. There were more. Marcus stopped, turning his head quickly, but there was nothing. Then, a faint sound. A twig snapping underfoot. He wasn't alone. He whipped around just as a figure emerged from the shadows, moving fast. It was Donovan, breathing heavily but with a look of grim determination. "They're close," Donovan hissed. "They'll be here any second. We need to get back to the cabin and double-lock the doors." But Marcus didn't reply. He kept his focus straight ahead. "Elijah," he said, the word barely a whisper on his lips. Donovan's face darkened. "Marcus, you need to think this through. You can't rush in blindly. This is bigger than both of us." "They have." But Marcus wasn't listening. He couldn't afford to. The more Donovan spoke, the more Marcus felt the grip of urgency tighten around his chest. He had no time for strategy or waiting. He had to protect his son, no matter the cost. Suddenly, the sound of an engine revved to life in the distance. The unmistakable roar of a car accelerating toward them. Marcus cursed under his breath and broke into a run again, weaving through the thick trees. He had to reach Elijah before whoever was chasing them did. And then, out of nowhere, a shadow darted in front of him. A man, tall and broad, emerging from behind a thick oak tree. "Marcus Hale," the man said, his voice cold and commanding, "you don't know what you're dealing with." Marcus stopped dead in his tracks, his instincts screaming that this was no ordinary threat. The figure in front of him wasn't just a man, it was someone trained, someone dangerous. The type of person who wouldn't hesitate to kill if necessary. "And you are?" Marcus growled, his hand still hovering near his weapon. The man didn't flinch. He took a step closer, his eyes never leaving Marcus. "My name is Trent." "Trent, huh?" Marcus muttered. "Well, Trent, I've got no interest in playing games with you." Trent's lips curled into a cruel smile. "That's the thing, Marcus. You don't have a choice. None of you do." Before Marcus could react, Trent lunged forward, faster than Marcus expected. The two collided with a heavy thud, the sound of bone meeting bone echoing through the trees. For a moment, everything was a blur. Marcus' training kicked in, but Trent was strong, unyielding. He twisted Marcus' arm, sending a shock of pain through his body. Marcus gasped, gritting his teeth. He couldn't let Trent get the upper hand. Not now. With a quick move, Marcus shifted his weight and threw Trent off balance, sending him crashing to the ground. But Trent was back on his feet in seconds, ready to fight again. Marcus looked over his shoulder, his mind focused on one thing. Elijah. And as he made eye contact with Donovan across the clearing, he knew one thing for sure. They weren't just fighting for their lives anymore. This was about keeping Elijah safe, at any cost. The clash of bodies echoed through the trees, but Marcus barely heard it. His focus was razor-sharp, honed on one singular goal, keeping Elijah out of harm's way. As Trent lunged again, Marcus sidestepped, using Trent's momentum against him. With a swift strike, he brought his knee up into Trent's ribs. The force of the hit made Trent stagger back, gasping for air. But Marcus couldn't afford to slow down. He turned and sprinted toward the cabin again, his legs burning with every step. The weight of the moment crashed over him. He couldn't do this alone, not anymore. "Donovan!" Marcus shouted as he broke through the trees, his eyes scanning for any sign of Elijah. There was no response. Only the sound of heavy footsteps, more than one person, approaching quickly from behind. Marcus gritted his teeth, his heart pounding. He was running out of time. He needed answers, and he needed them now. But when he finally reached the cabin, the door was wide open. Donovan was gone. Panic surged through Marcus. Had they gotten to him too? Had they taken his only ally? His breath quickened as he dashed into the cabin, searching every room in a frantic frenzy. There were signs of a struggle, furniture overturned, the windows left ajar. But there was no sign of Donovan. No sign of Elijah, either. The knot in Marcus' stomach tightened. They had to have moved them. But where? A small noise from behind him made him freeze. The floorboard creaked. "Marcus." It was a faint voice, familiar. "Elijah." He spun around, his pulse skyrocketing. There, at the far side of the cabin, stood his son, disheveled but alive. "Dad," Elijah breathed, his voice shaky but filled with relief. They're coming. They found us." Marcus rushed to his side, his heart sinking. "They took Donovan." Elijah nodded, his eyes wide with fear. "Yeah. He tried to stop them, but they were too fast. I think they were waiting for him." The words hit Marcus like a freight train. He couldn't believe it. Donovan, the one person who had been helping them, was now gone. Where did they go? Marcus demanded, gripping his son's shoulders, trying to steady himself. They said they were going to take him to a place called the compound. It's supposed to be somewhere hidden, off the grid. That's where they're going to keep him." "The compound," Marcus muttered, processing the name. It was familiar. Too familiar. He had heard whispers about it, rumors that floated around the more covert corners of the military. But it wasn't something he had ever imagined he would be involved with. "We're going to get him back," Marcus said, his voice dark and resolute. "You're safe now, Elijah. You're with me. And I will not let them take anyone else from us." Elijah looked up at his father, fear and admiration shining in his eyes. But, Dad, what about them? Who are they? Why are they after us? Marcus exhaled sharply, glancing around the cabin. They're not just anyone. They're a part of a shadow network, a group that has been hiding in the dark corners of the world for years. And they've been watching us for a long time. Me, you, Donovan. They've been pulling the strings behind the scenes, orchestrating everything we've been running from. Elijah's face fell. You mean, they're after us because of you? Marcus nodded grimly. Yes. It's bigger than just us, son. They want something. And they're willing to do whatever it takes to get it. A chill ran down Marcus' spine as he looked at his son. This wasn't just about protecting him anymore. It was about stopping a force far more powerful than anything they had faced before. Let's go, Marcus said, pulling Elijah toward the door. We're not staying here. They stepped outside, and Marcus felt the weight of the world press down on his shoulders. The sky above them was dark, the stars obscured by clouds. The night felt oppressive, as if the very air was holding its breath. The path ahead was unclear, but Marcus knew one thing for sure. He wasn't backing down. They would find Donovan. They would tear down the walls of this shadow operation. And they would make sure that whoever had come for them, whoever had dared to hurt his family, would never harm anyone again. As they moved deeper into the forest, a distant noise caught Marcus' attention. A hum, almost imperceptible, coming from the direction of the highway. The sound of a helicopter. And then, as if on cue, a bright light cut through the trees. Marcus and Elijah froze. The light blinked again, and then, the unmistakable shape of a black helicopter appeared, hovering overhead. Get down! Marcus shouted, pulling Elijah to the ground. They hit the forest floor just as the chopper's spotlight illuminated the cabin. The intense light made Marcus' eyes burn, but he didn't move. The sound of the helicopter blades grew louder, shaking the ground beneath them. And then, suddenly, a voice rang out from above. We know you're down there, Marcus. Come out. It's over. The voice from above reverberated through the trees, the command unmistakable. It's over, Marcus. We know you're down there. For a brief moment, the world around Marcus seemed to slow. His mind raced, but his body stayed still. This wasn't the end he had imagined for himself, or for Elijah. But somehow, here it was. He glanced at his son, fear still etched across Elijah's face. Yet in his eyes, there was something else now, determination. The same determination Marcus had lived by for years. Stay low, Marcus whispered, his voice calm yet urgent. I won't let them take you. Elijah nodded, his grip tightening on his father's sleeve. They had come too far to stop now. Above them, the helicopter's spotlight flickered again, a clear message. They weren't leaving without a fight. The blades whirred as the chopper descended, and the low hum of its engine felt like a storm on the horizon. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. But this wasn't a fight they could win from the ground. Not without Donovan. Not without a plan. We have to move, Elijah, Marcus said quietly. We can't stay here. The two of them rose from the forest floor, moving quickly but cautiously, as the helicopter hovered overhead. It was a cat-and-mouse game, and Marcus knew every second counted. They had to get to the safe house. The one place left where they had any chance of escaping the grip of whoever was after them. But as they moved deeper into the woods, the spotlight shifted, and Marcus froze. He could hear boots crunching the ground nearby. We've got company, he muttered under his breath. Elijah's eyes widened. Do you think we can outrun them? Marcus didn't answer immediately. But he knew the truth, they wouldn't be outrunning anything if they didn't make a stand. They couldn't keep running. Listen to me, son, Marcus said, his voice steady and commanding. I need you to trust me. The only way out of this is to face them head-on. Elijah looked up at him, the weight of the situation settling in. He nodded. I'm with you. With that, Marcus made his move. He turned to face the direction of the footsteps, his heart still pounding, but his resolve unwavering. The shadows ahead shifted, revealing two figures emerging from the tree line. Marcus didn't hesitate. He sprinted toward them, his mind fully focused on one thing: disabling them. The figures were closer now. The first man lunged toward him, but Marcus sidestepped with precision. With a quick strike, Marcus knocked the man to the ground. The second man came at him, but Marcus ducked, evading the attack, then spun and landed a solid blow to his ribs. Both men fell, stunned but not out. Marcus knew they would be back on their feet in seconds. He glanced over his shoulder, his heart racing. Elijah, get to the cabin. Now. But his son didn't move. Instead, Elijah stood there, watching the two men on the ground. I can't just leave you, Dad. Marcus gritted his teeth. Go. Now. And for a brief second, their eyes locked, and in that moment, Marcus saw his son's strength, his unwavering belief in his father. With one final look, Elijah turned and ran toward the cabin. Marcus quickly disabled the two men, ensuring they wouldn't be able to follow immediately. He sprinted after his son, but just as he reached the cabin, a familiar voice broke through the trees. Marcus. It was Donovan. With a sense of relief flooding through him, Marcus ran to the voice. Donovan was leaning against a tree, his hands bound, but alive. Donovan. Marcus said, kneeling beside him. Where's Elijah? Donovan nodded toward the cabin. He's inside. But we need to go, now. Marcus quickly untied Donovan's hands, and the three of them moved fast, away from the cabin, deeper into the woods, toward the hidden path that would lead them to safety. The helicopter hovered above, still searching. But Marcus was done running. They reached the safe house just as the night seemed to swallow them whole. The door slammed shut behind them, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Marcus allowed himself a breath. But the war wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Marcus looked at Donovan, who was already scanning the room, his mind working. We have to act fast, Donovan said, his voice low. They'll be back with reinforcements. Marcus nodded, his jaw tightening. We have one shot at this. We do it my way, fast and clean. Donovan didn't argue. He knew Marcus wasn't the kind of man to waste time. They had a battle ahead of them, but Marcus wasn't about to let them take anything else from him. With Elijah safe for now, and Donovan by his side, Marcus knew they could take down whatever shadows lingered over their lives. As dawn broke, the quiet of the safe house settled in. The helicopter's noise had long faded into the distance. But the fight was far from over. And Marcus was ready. For whatever came next.